Man is driven to go where no one has gone before. For some, the final frontier is here, below the Earth's surface. In caverns like these, so vast, cavers shrink to the scale of fireflies dancing in the dark.
Caving took me over completely. It's totally directed my life. It's driven me in terms of where I choose to work and where I choose to live and the friends I have and everything else. The people I go caving with are just fantastic. They're the best bunch of people I could ever imagine. Just wonderfully good company.
It's all right, because I can see the cairn from here, that's fine.
It gives me the opportunity to travel to parts of the world that other people don't get to.
Well, Michael, it's one of the most revolting places.
And above all, it's just great fun.
This huge labyrinth of caves lies beneath the Xingwen National Park in southwest China. Each week, a government propaganda lorry tours the area. The words may be indistinguishable, but the message is clear. Eternal devotion to the revolution and its leaders. Leaders often hostile to Western visitors. A British expedition arrives to explore the cave system, one of the largest and least known in the world. The field leader is Dick Willis. In Xingwen, songs of praise are strictly political. The iron grip of revolutionary orthodoxy is just beginning to relax. It's taken the team 10 years to get permission to chart a cave system that's never felt the breath of man.
It's fantastic down here. It's an incredible entrance. It's absolutely massive. And where the fellas are standing up on top there is a roof, and it only appears to be a couple of metres thick, you know. And then it cuts away in underneath them. It's really spectacular. It's brilliant.
What's the name of this one?
Tim Fogg has been caving for over 15 years. But he's seen nothing quite like this.
Or goat? Sheep?
Goat.
Goat.
Yes.
Okay. Good, so, goat cave. They brought us up here to look at some of the big shafts. What we're hoping is that these shafts will lead down, maybe, at the best, down to the river.
The Chinese need maps to show where the rivers go when they disappear underground. The British cavers have the necessary expertise.
What are we doing? Pulling through.
So far, the locals have only ventured into places accessible on foot. For them, the caves are alien places, haunted by spirits. Perhaps these foreigners are also from another world. If so, the Ghostbusters gear seems strangely appropriate. The expedition splits up into several groups. It's the only way to tackle the dozens of caves concealed in this huge limestone escarpment. They have just 1 month to explore and map them.
Yeah.
Prehistoric rivers carved these huge canyons before disappearing underground. Since caves are basically underground waterways, the guiding principle is clear. Find the main stream and follow it.
We basically chase water in caves. What we're looking at really is the passage of the water through the whole area and the master cave system that underlies all of this. So the ideal here would be to get in right at the very top of the mountain at the highest possible sinks and come out right at the bottom at the lowest possible resurgence. and be able to map the river system underground all the way through. So we might work 6 or 7 different caves and gradually connect them into one big system before we begin to make serious progress at following that river all the way through the mountain.
We've come down the pitch that Dick found earlier on, and it's horrible. It's just like liquid chocolate. It's really muddy. We've got a tiny little stream, and it obviously backs up in here. It's covered in thick, glutinous mud.
Wet mud means this overflow passage has recently flooded. If it were to happen again, Dick and Tim would drown. But they're convinced this passage leads to another cave. If so, the risks are worth it.
And the really exciting thing is that we're only 250 metres from another cave that's been explored. So there is a very tiny, tiny little chance that we might get out the other way.
The caving is so wide. It has so many aspects. It still has pure adventure, wonderful adventure. Literally walking where nobody's walked before. I mean, that's a great thrill. Brilliant.
Then, suddenly, hopes of a breakthrough are dashed. The passage is flooded. This is what cavers call a sump.
A sump, very convincing sump.
Above all else, good caving strategy needs accurate maps. Every evening, the day's surveys are given to Tony Waltham, the expedition's chief mapmaker.
This is planning our next attack.
Oh, have you got it?
We've got half a dozen open passages down there we could be going at. We want to go at the best one to get the best results.
Skylight is the one that Brookie looked down to quite close to the village.
As the intricate three-dimensional jigsaw takes shape, it becomes clear where different caves link up.
So we're about there. So if you've got
The series of wet, muddy holes in the ground begins to form a system, something which for cavers has an almost aesthetic beauty.
So it's not the same one. Right?
That's brilliant.
The caves are proving to be even more spectacular than expected. St. Paul's Cathedral would fit into this space twice over.
I'll be shot for this. You could probably fit most of the Mendips into this particular cave on its own. But caves of this scale we've only really found in Southeast Asia, in southern China, and particularly in Borneo, places like that. I mean, this is huge. When you come out expecting to go into something a couple of metres wide and you find yourself in something 50 metres wide, that's really quite a burst. A lot of this cave has been looked at by the local people. And down here at the end where we were looking, there's some very extensive nitrate workings where they've mined the old bat guano and they've processed that to turn it into nitrate for explosives. And that's actually very good. I mean, you're getting in there and it's archaeology, history in the flesh right in front of you.
This man is 96 years old. He remembers a time, 60 years ago, when most local people worked the caves. They collected bat dung, extracting nitrate for gunpowder.
Years ago, this area had many bandits. They kidnapped people and held them for ransom. People were scared, so they made their own guns to defend themselves.
Today, only a few are left who still know how to extract nitrate.
Today, people still fear the caves. They say they are haunted by spirits. They say they hear voices. No one dares go down alone for fear of getting lost.
But for cavers like Pete Francis, this risk has a strange appeal. Caving is the subterranean equivalent of space travel, the same impenetrable darkness, a sense of leaving the world behind.
We were involved in one cave, which we'd been digging the entrance for a couple of years. Eventually, one weekend, we removed the last few boulders, and beneath us, the magical thing, black space. We went in quickly, and there was a new cave. We were the first people ever to be there. The cave had been created millions of years ago, never seen a light in it. The formations had never been lit before, and we were the first people. It was a magical moment. It's the sort of thing where the adrenaline's flowing, you're almost screaming with joy. It's such a... I went home that evening, and the news said that the first man, Neil Armstrong, had landed on the moon, and there was the shot of him coming off with the small step for man and big step for mankind speech. And I knew how he felt, because I'd done the same thing. As that boulder had been removed, I put my foot forward, and I'd taken the same step.
Pete is putting a harmless green dye into the water. Colouring the stream will show where it eventually emerges from the mountain.
What a terrible thing to do to a nice clean stream.
This is where the main river emerges, and the water is far from clean. Although a national park, Xingwen is littered with small sulphur factories. Many of them smoking infernos that recall Dickens' descriptions in the 19th century. Methods for extracting the sulphur are primitive. Simon Bottrell is the expedition chemist. One of his jobs is to check pollution levels.
19.3.
The tests show worryingly high concentrations of sulfuric acid.
Temperature okay now?
It appears that the worst of the problems seem to come from the processing of the ore that they produce rather than the mines themselves. That processing plant is situated directly above a river, and all their effluent just goes straight in at the moment.
The muck you can see that makes the dirt in the water there is sort of suspended sediment, which is coming out of the mine washing plant as well. Then you've also got the water itself is very, very acidic. Simon measured this early on, and we're sort of talking about 3 point something. I mean, it's a strong acid, which is coming from the leaching, and it's all the rubbish which is left around the plant. Rainwater gets through it, picks it up, goes acid, and comes down here.
Pollution like this is an added danger. There's much to explore, and time is short. Without proper protective clothing, acid water will slow the expedition down even more. The problem is discussed at the breakfast planning meeting. One of their most promising leads is blocked by a large, highly acidic lake.
Have you decided how you're going to get across that red lake? Are you going to use a line or what are you going to do? I was thinking swimming, but Kenny's going to walk on the water, isn't he? Simon's got one of these drums, and he puts his hands on that and puts all the survey gear in it to keep it dry. Yeah.
Unforeseen events call for improvisation.
Great, this. Quite definitely. I don't know if I fall over, I'll bounce back up again.
Not if you land on your nose.
Caving is always a carefully calculated balance of risk against result. The water at the end of this passage may be highly acidic.
This is the stuff which Simon said was 2.7 pH. It's about as acidic as you can get, I think.
But against that, there is the eternal hope of a link-up. Plastic suits may protect the skin, but there are unseen dangers.
The side effect is you get a sort of a mist of sulfuric acid just hanging in the air in these unventilated bits of cave. And that's nasty because the mist particles of the acid, they can hold the base metals, and those can be poisonous.
Some of the cavers are beginning to fall sick. The symptoms are blinding headaches and extreme fatigue.
We've met bad air here. That's the first time I've ever come across it. It's unusual in cave systems because, as somebody said to you the other day, the way you explore a cave is to follow a draft. And that normally precludes bad air. And that's worse today than yesterday?
Yeah, far more weakness. The worst, most evidence gone to 20-volt thunder room today. I felt I'd walked 10 miles. So I just slept for a few hours afterwards.
Kenny Taylor has been the worst affected because he went down this rope into a place where he could actually see the mist. The supposition at the time was that it was a low oxygen effect, but to me he showed symptoms of having swallowed some sort of poison, which may have come from this vapour over the water.
Worse still, the weather has broken. Torrential rain sweeps in from the north. Weather like this brings flash floods, something all cavers dread.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of every caver's sort of, well, worst nightmare if he's underground, because we've got a couple of going leads with passages which we know will flood, and this has probably finished it.
It's now a race against time and the weather. Still, no link-up has been made. Exploring in conditions like these is the supreme test of skill and character. This is not just a search for places where no one has ever been. It can also be a way of finding yourself.
Deep down inside us all, we have certain basic fears. Fear of the dark, things lurking around corners, primeval monsters, dragons. But of course, as we get older, we suppress them. And we think that we've got rid of them, they're just childish fears, but I think they're so basic, they're primordial, that deep down inside our psyche, in our unconscious, they're still there. And sometimes we have to confront them.
The expedition is facing an increasingly serious situation. One by one, the leads are closing down. Though they have a lot of detailed information about individual caves, the overall system remains disjointed, like so many pieces of Lego waiting to be put together. Pete Francis and Mike Burtonshaw have hit a stream that may lead down to the main river. The rain has turned it into a foaming cataract. Mike decides to try a small overflow passage high above them. At the same time, Kenny Taylor sets off to explore a potential new lead in Pig Trough Cave.
From here, there's a steeply descending chamber which meets water, and then down through some boulders, and there's another pitch of about 60, 70 foot, and today we intend to go down and see what's at the bottom of that, hoping that the system continues.
Meanwhile, Mike has discovered that the overflow passage is even more dangerous than the stream.
Well, what appears to be a ledge across there above the cascade is covered in mud, very unstable. So I think it's safe to attack the cascade directly, come back with a rope. That is dangerous.
Even with ropes, one false step could be fatal. Frustration is mounting. The stream Kenny Taylor has found is a no-goer. It ends at another sump, and once again, the water is highly acidic.
Right, so what happened?
A no-goer. Another acid lake.
Another lead closes down.
Back home for tea.
Right.
There we go.
Everything now rests on Mike and Pete. They know it goes through, but will this passage be flooded too?
Quite tight. Still going, though. Sit. Yeah, it's going through.
But it's yet another sump. It's a cruel disappointment. The team is beginning to regret their lack of diving gear.
So that's it. Wind up the tape and go home.
I think we've probably blown it. No, we haven't blown it. The weather's blown it. Heavens above, we're wonderful.
At last, after 3 days, the weather does clear, perhaps to brighten a local Chinese wedding. The priest blesses the bride and prays for her health and happiness. The cavers are praying the weather will hold. Even in this heat, it'll be a couple more days before the water level drops. Dick and Tony weigh up the chances. One final hope of a link-up remains.
It's a matter of going for what we know is there. Some bits are still going to be flooded, but that place down into the mud where Dick and Tim were a few days back, that's the way that could go on. It's heading right for Falling Waters Cave. That's the link-up I think we'll have to go for. That's got to be the target.
This is the downstream end of Flowing Waters Cave, most of which is a huge, beautiful cave, and this is a horrible, nasty, tight, wet thing with a river in the bottom. But there is a howling draft going through here, strong enough to blow out my carbide light.
Right, coming through.
And we know that this place is very, very close, about 30, 40 metres away from where Tim and I got to at the end of Zhujiaojing the other day in the horrible muddy stuff. So Andy, Tim and I are going to shoot down here, see if we can get through this bit. And it's obviously open because there's a draft and the water's dropped about 4 metres. We're going to see if we can get through and make the connection, which should be good fun. I suppose making a connection between two caves is one of the most satisfying things you can do, because it proves all of your theories. And there's this tremendous sense of satisfaction, which must be like putting in that final piece of a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and it just all clicks into place, and it's just wonderful.
The water, when we were in here, we walked into water here. And that was a sump. There was water flowing out of there.
It's great. We've made the connection. We sort of made the final piece in the jigsaw. This cave now is connected through to Zhujiaojing, and it was lovely to go through the canals there and find the survey station again from the other end, you know. So great, really chuffed.
In Xingwen, we explored 30 kilometres in 4 weeks, and in that we made a connection between two of the bigger cave systems there, and that's a fantastic achievement in the period that we were there.
Even so, much more work needs to be done. But with the knowledge the cavers have given them, perhaps the Chinese can solve the pollution problems that threaten Xingwen.
Voyager attempts to walk from sea level to the peak of Everest without oxygen next Thursday at 7:30.